Hello, hello, hello.
How are you doing? Thanks so much for having me.
I'm good. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Arscott. We really, really appreciate it. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad, not too bad. Just trying to make sure I'm set up properly here. Wonderful to be talking to Trinidad and Tobago tonight and all the T and T family around the world.
Very nice, man. Very nice. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us. Now, Dr. Ramon Arscott is an American board-certified Harvard-trained plastic and reconstructive surgeon who also has a PhD from the University of Oxford in immunology. That's what we're talking about tonight, right? So, to give you all a grand entrance, a grand opening, but I want you to introduce yourself to the people of Trinidad before I bring the next.
Okay, wonderful. Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. Thanks to the TRIBE family for reaching out. Again, as you mentioned, I'm Ramon Arscott. I hope you can hear me just fine. Can you hear me just fine?
I'm hearing you, man. I'm hearing you clearly.
Awesome, great. As you said, I'm a plastic and reconstructive surgeon by day. Did all my training for that at Harvard. So I was in Boston for a long time, did general surgery at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, and then did plastic surgery across Mass General and Boston Children's, etc. But before I got to Boston, I was actually at the University of Oxford doing a PhD looking at in immunology, looking at vaccine strategies, boosting the immune system, first a viral model of H1N1, and then looking at melanomas, looking at tumor immunology. Can we get a vaccine for cancer? So I was at the University of the West Indies prior to that, and after that I got the Rhodes Scholarship to Oxford. So I'm speaking to you tonight in the capacity of my immunology hat and not my reconstructive surgery hat.
Because I know I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions about the reconstructive surgery as well, but today we are focused on immunology. Now, Doctor, can you tell us where in the world are you located right now?
It's a great question. While I've given this talk as far as Ghana and Benin and West Africa, I've done it in New York, I've done it in Jamaica, I've done it in Germany, Canada. Today, right now I'm in one of my homes, what I call my primary home right now, which is in Bermuda, because my wife is Bermudian. And I met my wife at Oxford. She was also on the Rhodes Scholarship. And so 2.5 years ago, when I left Boston with our 1-year-old son, and we now live in Bermuda. So I'm calling you from another island home within CARICOM.
Very nice. So you're in Bermuda. Nice, nice. One Caribbean family, of course. Let me get ready to bring my next guest in. There. Okay. Dr. Garcia, I sent you the request, so you have to accept it to come into the conversation right here. And we are going to get the ball rolling. As I said, guys, tonight it's called Fact with Fiction. We have two doctors who practically specialize in immunology. They are the ones who know it about this. And if you have the question tonight, you could send some questions in the question box as well. We will try to get to them tonight before the program over. And of course, I have some questions from as well. Hello, Dr. Garcia. How are you doing?
Hi, everyone.
I'm good. You're hearing us clearly?
Hearing you all clear.
Great, great, great. Dr. Garcia is an American board-certified internal medicine consultant and hospice specialist. She's an award-winning published author with multiple international presentations under her belt. This is a cakewalk for you tonight, Dr. Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. So when the pandemic hit, I was actually working in Florida at Cleveland Clinic. I did my internal medicine residency, and then I headed over to University of Miami and Jackson Memorial. And I was 7 months pregnant in University of Miami when the pandemic was there. So I cared for COVID patients both in America and now here in Trinidad.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Guys, y'all are hearing me clearly, right?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we're hearing it clearly.
Okay, I'm getting a little, some people are saying my audio is giving trouble. So hopefully this will let itself out. I want to get down to the nitty-gritty right now, to the first question, which is, they say my audio is a little spotty. I may have to relocate. All right, let me see this quickly.
So Chelsea, you have a 1-year-old?
I have a 6-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I heard you say that you had a son.
Yeah, my son's now 4. So,
wow, okay.
so yeah, when we left Boston, he was 1 at the time.
Yeah, so you know how it is to juggle work plus home.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, congrats. A boy, a girl?
I have a girl and a boy, so I have a bit of both.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
Guys, are y'all hearing me now? Let me see if this is working a little bit.
Been hearing you.
Well, y'all are hearing me clearly, but the people at home are not hearing me, and I want to make sure that we are all set before we get into the nitty-gritty of it. So I'm going to do it from here. Hopefully this will be a little better. And guys, I want to start off with the first question. Right now, as I said, this is fact versus fiction. So one of the main questions that we've been getting, now as I have 2 professional doctors on the panel with me, I'm going to let you all take turns, of course, ladies first. So Dr. Chelsea Garcia, you can go first, and Dr. Arscott, you can chime in with anything that you have to add, and then the next question will be to you, right? So we take
No problem.
All right, so question 1. The vaccine prevents COVID, right? Is that fact or fiction?
It does, yes. It prevents COVID. It prevents hospitalization. It prevents severity of getting COVID, and it saves lives.
Fantastic.
So I put a little nuance on that response. So what I always tell patients is, because over the last year I've heard both concerns about the vaccine as well as the virus, and it doesn't prevent infection, but it prevents disease. Okay? So there's a very different, to say it prevents COVID is kind of a broad brush that will miss the nuance and leave you open to criticism for those who get vaccinated and then test positive for COVID. So they're like, hold on, I thought you told me it prevents COVID. I said, no, it prevents disease. It doesn't prevent infection. And as we go on, we can talk about what's the difference between the two.
Right. Okay. Well, as we go on, we will jump into more of the difference between the two, because I need to know as well. I don't know all the facts, and this is what we're here for now. So question 2, as I said, I will direct to Dr. Arscott, and Dr. Garcia, you can add in as well. But doesn't getting the virus give me COVID? I don't want to have COVID, so why am I going to get... Sorry, I don't want to get the vaccine because the vaccine gives me COVID. Is that true or is that false? Is that fact or fiction?
So that's a great question. And for you to understand where that question came from and why people feel this way, you have to understand, 1, how vaccines have been given over the last 30 to 50 years, and 2, how it's evolved over that time and what the COVID vaccine is. So if for you to understand that, you have to understand how the immune system works, okay? So if you go into, there's like a 17-minute video where I can give you the baseline of it. But the reason people think that they're getting the virus when they get the vaccine, because that's exactly what we used to do. In fact, that's what we still do for other vaccines. So if you think of the immune system as an army, okay? And like every army, there are different members of the army. There's a general, there's a policeman that carries handcuffs, and when I talk about handcuffs, I'm talking about antibodies. And there's the sniper, the shoot to kill guy, and there's an investigator, the investigation officers. We call them antigen presenting cells. And what they do when they run into a virus is they create a SWAT team, a memory force that will always remember this virus. So if he ever shows up again, you'll kill him. The time it takes to create that SWAT team is about 2 weeks. So who do we vaccinate you against? We vaccinate you against those viruses that are so dangerous that they will do a lot of harm in those 2 weeks before you can create that SWAT team, before you can create those policemen with handcuffs, i.e. antibodies against this intruder. So what they used to do is say, okay, can we give you a heads up about these dangerous intruders ahead of time? So you can create this SWAT team before you run into the real thing. So I picture this intruder as a gunman with a gun. So what they did, they took away the gun and gave you the gunman. So they gave you a live gunman without his gun, so he wasn't as dangerous. Your immune system learned it over 2 weeks, created this SWAT team against this gunman. So if the real gunman ever showed up with the gun, you cuff him and you shoot him. That is what the measles, the mumps, the rubella, the live polio vaccine, those MMR vaccines were the live gunman, i.e. the live virus without the gun. So I understand where it came from, but that's not what the COVID vaccine is. Okay? The flu shot. In fact, I looked online and I realized that you guys have Sinopharm.
Yes.
You have a vaccine from China. The flu shot, Sinopharm. What are those? That is the dead gunman. What they took the gunman, they killed him, gave you the dead gunman, the dead virus, and said, learn him. So if he ever shows up alive with a gun, you have your SWAT team ready. You have the 2 weeks to create that SWAT team, those policemen with the handcuffs. That's what those vaccines are. That's not what the Pfizer, the Moderna, the Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, that's not what they are. What are they? They said, how can we make this safer? Without giving you a live gunman, i.e. without the gun, what we call live attenuated vaccines. Without giving you the dead gunman, i.e. a killed vaccine, like flu or Sinopharm. They said, suppose we just look at what makes this gunman unique. What makes this virus different from other viruses? And how I describe it is that he's the only one that wears a green hat. No other intruder wears a green hat. And for COVID, that green hat is the spike protein. And why is it a great target? Because it needs the spike protein to break into your house, to break into the cell that it's going to multiply in. So they say, okay, if this one's, suppose we just gave you the hat and say, learn that hat. And if any gunman shows up with this hat on, you kill him. You cuff him and kill him. That is how they went about making this vaccine. The hat. Not the whole gunman, not even the dead man. Just the hat. Just a little bit of protein. The hat can't hurt you. They did it because it's safer. And they did it because they're trying to also make a big immune response while giving you something without giving you the whole virus. So are you getting the virus? No. You're getting the hat. You're getting a little bit of protein. Do I understand where this concern came from? Absolutely. Because historically, what we gave you was a virus, albeit without the gun. And that's what your measles, if everybody looks on the immunization card and they realize they got the measles and mumps and rubella vaccine, MMR, when they were 1, 5, and before college, that's what it is. The gunman without the gun. But this is not that. So it's not the virus.
Thank you for that breakdown. That's the first time I heard it coming from that kind of light. You know, over the last few weeks, I've had the pleasure of speaking to so many different people and hear these different explanations. And what we really appreciate, and I think the purpose of this entire series is really to break it down to layman's terms so everyone could understand. So we could eradicate that a lot of, in particular, Trinidad and Tobago and the world have right now the vaccine. So thank you so much for that explanation. Everybody's saying preach, preach.
And he's so right, and I love that terminology because you're essentially right. Our immune system is an army, and we are at war. And just to clarify to those who may not have caught it, you cannot get COVID-19 from the vaccine. I think that's something that we hear a lot. So just to clarify, you can't get COVID-19 from the vaccine. Exactly what is explained. The gunman has no gun. It's just a picture, and it's just a heads up, as you so accurately described, to let your body knows, hey, what? You're about to go to war. This is what the man is looking like.
100%, 100%. Thank you guys for that clarification. Question 3. Next, I'm going to direct this to Dr. Garcia, which is also another very popular question that we've been getting. Why get vaccinated if it does not completely eradicate the possibility of getting future infection? If I could still get COVID after I get the vaccine, what's the point of getting the vaccine?
And that also is a very good question. So I think the best way for me to explain this is to give you an example of one of the nursing homes I look after here in Trinidad and Tobago. So one of those nursing homes had all members of the staff partially vaccinated, in that they had their first shot. Mm-hmm. And they were exposed to COVID 3 weeks after their first shot. And if you listen to what Dr. Arscott says, he says that it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for you to build that army, for your immune system to take that heads up and say, boom, let's mount the army. So these residents had their vaccine. Their immune system had enough time to recognize and know what COVID was looking like. They were exposed to COVID, and out of all the residents there, out of 11 residents, 3 persons got COVID. And I want you to think of a nursing home with an elderly population with comorbid illnesses. Of those three residents, one was doing somersaults and had no idea he had COVID. Okay. The other one had headaches and nausea. And another one who had very poor lungs, she required oxygen and she required a little bit extra support. They are now all alive, right? And fully recovered and doing well. And that is just one personal example right here in Trinidad that shows us, yes, they got COVID after they got the vaccine. Yes, they were protected from the vaccine, but yes, they are all alive. And I think that is one of the biggest considerations is you could still get COVID after the first vaccine. You could still get COVID after the second vaccine, but less chance of death, less chance of hospitalization, and biggest chance of protection and not going through the trauma and the experience that others have had to go through.
All right. That's a great overview for sure. All right, those are the key points. But to understand what is happening in these patients, why take the vaccine? People say, oh, well, you're telling me to get it, and but I'm still going to catch it, so why take it? And I get it and say, all right, yeah, you say I'm not going to get sick, but why take it? What's the difference between getting infected and getting the disease? Okay? So remember, this gunman shows up, right? This gunman breaks into your house. I want you to realize your entire body is a neighborhood. And every cell in the neighborhood is a house, right? There are 37 trillion houses in this neighborhood called your body. And each virus has a house it likes to break into. SARS-CoV-2 likes the pneumocyte, likes the lung cell. That's the house it likes to break into. And why does it want to break into the house? Because when it gets in, you have little workmen in the house that can multiply this guy, can take his book on how to make him a multiply. So he wants to multiply when he gets inside you. Once he can multiply, then you have enough to give someone else. So you're more transmissible. Once he can multiply, he does what other viruses love to do. He likes to change. He likes to mutate. So if the gunman has a red jacket, he multiplies and has a blue, it just has a new coat. Sometimes he picks up a bigger gun, becomes a more deadly virus. But if you have your SWAT team and policemen at the door, he might get in, i.e. you caught COVID. But guess what? He's cuffed and he's shot. So he doesn't have a time to multiply. Therefore, he can't destroy the house and have enough to pass on to someone else. So you're not transmissible or less transmissible. And 2, he can't mutate. Therefore, you can't have another mutation. So the difference between infection and disease, when they give them a chance to multiply, i.e. when you infect somebody who is not vaccinated, who does not have the army, he literally breaks into a house, use all the raw material, multiplies, moves to the next house, breaks into that one, multiplies, and makes you sick, but then also has so many of them that he can give them away, so you can spread it. And also, he may have picked up a bigger gun, or he changed his hat. And if he changes his hat, even the vaccinated won't be protected. So far, the hat hasn't changed. But it's a race against time. So the difference between infection and disease is just that. He broke in, but he couldn't multiply and he couldn't change. Therefore, he couldn't make you sick, you can't pass him on, and he can't create a new monster.
Understood, understood. Thank you very much, Dr. Arscott. This next question is directed to you now. If I have already had COVID, I'm immune, why do I need to get vaccinated if I already had the COVID-19 virus?
Very good question. Very good question. What is the difference between virus immunity, virus-initiated immunity versus vaccine-initiated immunity? Okay. What do we know? We know that if Aaron caught SARS-CoV-2 versus Chelsea versus Ramon got SARS-CoV-2, my army might see this gunman who has a green hat, blue jacket, brown shoes, and a gun, and my army might create specialized forces targeting the blue jacket. And I might create a big force or a small force depending on how young or how fit or how old I am. Chelsea might create army against the green hat. Aaron might create against the brown shoes. We create antibodies against different parts of the virus. And we create different amounts among us. What we know is that those who have an army against the hat so far are protected against every mutant, because he can't change the hat very well, because he needs the hat to get around. So all the variants, UK variant, South African variant, Brazilian variant, Indian variant, those are of concern out of the millions of variants because the hat looks like it's changed a little bit, but it's still green. So I caught it, say not me, but I'm just saying hypothetically. Say if I caught it and I wasn't vaccinated, my army might be against the blue jacket. He changes the jacket, I'll catch it again. You can't count me in the herd immunity, right? What we know is that the ones who are vaccinated will have an army against the green hat. Therefore, we count them in those who are protected against everything out there, not the ones who have been just caught the virus, because we don't know how much antibody they created and if the antibodies they created, if the army they created is protective. Does that make sense? Was that too convoluted?
No, I'm with you. I understand what you're saying. I like the analogy. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they love the analogy because, as I said, we need to break it down as clear as possible. Chelsea, you have anything to add to that point before I throw the next question to you?
No, I think it was very well explained. And again, I love it because this is a fight and I love the army analogy.
Most definitely, most definitely. We are at war right now, but we will overcome. We will see brighter days, most definitely.
And what I could expand on the army analogy is we are at war right now, as you said, Aaron. But remember, when we go into battle as a soldier, we're not going in, back in the days when they went into war. Did they go to war for themselves? No. They went to protect their country. They went to protect their family. They went to protect their colleagues. And that's essentially exactly where we're at right now. So yes, the vaccine is a personal choice, right? But in this war, getting the vaccine is not only to protect yourself. It's to protect your country, your colleagues at work, as well as the family around you. So it has a lot of repercussions. And it's, are you fighting for yourself or are you fighting for everyone that's on the battlefront right now?
Okay, so can I answer one more thing? Mm-hmm. Just to this point about why not just let us catch COVID, okay? Why not just let's catch COVID, and then I see a question here. Where is the evidence that my immune system response and creating this army to the virus is just as good as if I create an army just to the hat? Because if I give you the hat, the only thing you're creating is to the hat, okay? We know that all the mutants out there, they change the jacket, they change the gun, they change everything else, but they can't really change the hat. Okay, say you buy the argument that, okay, my natural immunity is just as good. What you have not taken into account, by the way, which is not, but what you haven't taken into account is that by catching it and not having the gunman, the army to shoot and cuff him, you've allowed it to multiply inside you. And if you allow it to multiply inside you, you have allowed it to potentially change and create a more dangerous virus or one with a different hat. So you're like, okay, to Chelsea's point, you're doing it for your country. You're now trying to vaccinate everybody else. And you've said, this is the enemy on the battlefield. I'm not going to get the vaccine. I'm going to get infected. And it changes in me and becomes more dangerous. It picks up a bigger gun. So now the whole country is facing a new enemy, a more dangerous enemy, one that our armies are not even recognizing because you didn't have the army to cuff him and shoot him before he could multiply. So to the her point about doing it for others, you might get over it because you're 25 and you managed to be in that 97% that didn't die. But you made yourself the vessel to potentially create a different monster. So that is it where the debate, it is your choice whether you get the vaccine or not. But what right do you have to put everybody else in danger? Even though you have the right to choose whether you get it or not. I'll leave that point by saying, when we lock up somebody for speeding, I don't lock them up. We don't lock them up because they're about to kill themselves. We lock them up because they're a danger to others. So doing it for your country means not being that person that creates the new monster.
For real, guys. Thank you so much for that insight, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. I live in Trinidad. I have a very small family. I live here. My parents live right down the street, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to rush to get vaccinated is because in these times of lockdown, the very few people that I share my space with are my elderly parents, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I knew that I wasn't doing all I could to protect myself, and then, God forbid, go and bring COVID to someone who may not be able to fight it as good as me. So I 100% agree with you all that it's not just about, it's not a selfish decision. You're not getting vaccinated just to protect yourself. You're doing it to protect everyone around you. So I really like to stick a pin in that point that we made tonight, guys. Fantastic. Thank you so much, doctors. Moving to the next question now for Dr. Chelsea Garcia, and I know she's excited about this question. Why was this vaccine developed so quickly? I don't trust it. They rush. I don't know why they do this so fast. I don't know what to do. Give me a little bit more insight on.
I think to first talk about this, we'll talk a little bit about vaccine development and how a vaccine is developed. All right. So before there's even, I'm sure everybody's has heard about phases. Okay. Before there's these phases, there's a preclinical period. And in that preclinical period, they do the science and they identify, if this vaccine is safe based on their preclinical studies. Now, once they've passed all the preclinical studies, they enter into phases. And there are 3 distinct phases: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And you can't progress from one phase to the next unless you've met stringent safety data. So phase 1 is about dosing, as well as safety profile. Phase 2, when you've finished phase 1, you then enter into phase 2. It's larger participants, again, more safety profile. And then phase 3 is where you then start to assess efficacy of the virus. Now, to progress to these stages, you must pass one to the next. And not only must you meet stringent criteria, but of course you have committees, you have independent vaccine experts. These are people that don't own shares in your vaccine company and are here to criticize you every step of the way to make sure corners are not cut, to make sure that safety criteria is fully met. So that's one thing to vaccine development. And just to summarize that, I will say that the reason that all these protocols are followed and everything has to meet safety data is because the goal is to keep people safe. And I'm going to add to that by saying, when coronavirus hit, we had a heads up because vaccines that were similar were already in development. So we had the Middle Eastern respiratory coronavirus that was around for years before. Okay, we had the SARS-CoV-1, which we had already started to make vaccines on, right? And those vaccines kind of fell out. So the vaccine development on them was halted. But when we saw COVID-19 come up, we then said, okay, we have a little head start. So it may seem that things happen quickly, but we had all that already ongoing. And there was already preclinical studies and small human studies that were already done there. Another point I will add to that, and what Dr. Arscott says, is, for example, the Sinopharm vaccine, as well as the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca. So in Trinidad, we have 3 vaccines. We have AstraZeneca, we have Sinopharm, and we have Johnson & Johnson on the way. These are not new technology, okay? So the Sinopharm was developed from MMR. Who hasn't taken the MMR vaccine? And as Dr. Arscott said, it's inactivated. It's developed from old science. These are things that we've been taking years before. This is not something new. The only thing new is the coronavirus sequence and the man with the hat and the gun that we know who to target, right? Then the AstraZeneca, the Johnson & Johnson. These are adenovirus technology. These, again, are not something new. We got this from what we use for Ebola. So it might seem like, woo, COVID's here, and all of a sudden we come out with a vaccine. But there is a lot of experience that has gone into this. And I just want to make it clear that corners aren't cut. It's been multiple years in existence. And to be where we are right now did not come overnight. And I'm going to let Dr. Arscott expand on that because I know he's just itching to add. So you can go right ahead.
Thanks, Chelsea. That was well put. So she spoke about Sinopharm being old technology. It is, right? I said the flu shot is just like Sinopharm. They took the gunman, they killed him, i.e. they gave the inactivated virus. She spoke about the adenovirus being a vector, okay? And that's old technology we used in Ebola. What does she mean by that? And let's touch on this RNA thing, okay? Because they're like, oh, never gotten a vaccine with messenger RNA. You know, what is this? This must have just come about. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about the timeline. Since you think it was overnight. So let's give you a time. 30 years. 30 years. Okay? Why do I say 30 years? Now, you have to understand how the immune system works to figure out why it took 30 years to develop this vaccine and why it didn't happen overnight. They realized, remember that SWAT team? The snipers? We call them CD8 killer T cells. You know what they're good at? They're good at going after intruders that get inside the house, get inside a cell, where viruses like to go. Some bacteria like to go inside a cell, like TB. They like to go inside a cell. HIV likes to go inside the general, the CD4 cell. The policemen with the handcuffs, they're really good at going after the viruses on the street, the ones circulating outside the cell. They realized for them to create a really big SWAT team that's going to be there to go inside a cell, go after the virus, they needed to put the hat inside the house. When they threw the hat on the roadside, when they just gave it a hat and just injected the hat, you didn't really form a big SWAT team, as if you gave them the full dead gunman. So it's like, how do we get the hat in the house? Because if you came home and found somebody else's clothes in your house, you're like, what the hell? How is it somebody else's clothes in my house? So that's what your body responds. It's like, how is this hat in the house? How is this spike protein, this foreign antigen inside one of my cells? Boom, create a big SWAT team, look for it. So to know how to do that, they had to know how inside a house works. Know what's inside every house. What's inside your cells? You have little workmen, we call them ribosomes. What do? They repair the house. They build a cabinet, they replace the toilet. Anytime you have some problems inside the house, these workmen do it. And how do they know how to do it? They have a little book, a little manual that tells them what makes up your house, Aaron, what makes up Chelsea's house. You know what that book is called? RNA. they read the book called RNA. There's another book called DNA in the safe in the bedroom, the safe being the nucleus. But they can't read DNA. They can only read RNA. So they said, suppose we gave him a book on how to make the hat. He makes the hat, now the hat's inside the house. Boom, alarms set off, you make a big SWAT team. They were trying to figure that out in the 90s. They figured it out, and as Chelsea said, in 2003, SARS-CoV-1 came out. So in 2003, they started working on it then. How do we create a book on how to make a hat of SARS-CoV-1? Then Corona showed up again in 2013 in the Middle East called MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. It had a mortality of 34.6%. 1 in 3 people died from this thing. They were working, oh my God, we need to really make a vaccine for this. But they realized that injecting the book was so fragile, they needed to figure out how to create a shell to deliver the book. Pfizer and Moderna created a shell in the lab. They call it a lipid nanoparticle, a little bit of fat. Somebody's asking, what's in the vaccine? Fat. Okay, it's a fat shell delivering the book on how to make the hat. They put a little salt, a little sugar, and water. That's it. There's no aluminum. There's no other ingredients. That's it. And they delivered. What did Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca do? Exactly what Chelsea said. They delivered the book using the shell of an old harmless virus called an adenovirus. That is why she said it's old technology. How do we deliver this book? Deliver the book, your workmen get the book, and they say, what's this? They make the protein. Crap, this is a foreign protein. This is a green hat. Immune system say, what's this? It's inside the house. You create a SWAT team. And then they started creating the shell and mRNA in the 90s. By the time SARS-CoV-2 came out, they were already looking on COVID-1 in 2003. This is like Terminator 2. We already had Terminator 1. So when it came out, literally, you look, it took them 1 weekend to create the vaccine because they had the technology lined up. They've been working on it for 30 years. This wasn't overnight.
Well said.
Understood. And I think that is definitely something that I didn't know as well. And I mean, thinking about it now, it makes sense. But yeah, obviously, if you're working on a project that's very similar to a new project that comes up, it's easy to transfer the information over and continue. So you're not starting from the ground up, but you have a good head start on getting to a very much needed finish line as we need the vaccine in record time. So I hope that question and answer would have addressed a little bit of the fears that people have with the quote-unquote rush of the production of the vaccine. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is hashtag Let Me Take a Shot TT right here on Carnival Tribe's Instagram. I'm your host, Aaron Fingal, and we have a lovely conversation today about fact and fiction with 2 fantastic doctors in my company today. Dr. Arscott, he's based in Bermuda right now, and Dr. Chelsea Garcia, based right here, homegrown Trinidad and Tobago. Again, thank you so much, guys. I have a few more questions for you all. This one is directed to Dr. Arscott now. Now, as I always say, I work in the creative field. And in the creative field, I fully believe that in a brainstorm, there's no such thing as a bad idea. Also, in a forum open to questions, there's no such thing as a bad question. If you don't know the answer, by all means, answer. Feel free to ask a question. Now, this question is one that we've been hearing, some in jest, some seriously. The vaccine, does it make my arm magnetic? Or are they inserting a chip into my body? Is the government trying to track me down? And you're seeing videos with people putting metal on their hands. And now, Dr. Arscott, could you enlighten us a little bit about some of those questions that may be asked? And what do you think of those questions? And can you give us a respectable answer, please?
Okay, so thanks for that question. I'll be honest with you. I've done I don't know, double digits of these forums now across a few countries. And every time we get a question, we try and find the genesis of it. So the question earlier about, oh, are you giving me the virus versus the hat? And I'm like, okay, I understand where that came from because we did that. I understand some of the fertility questions, some of the Ivermectin questions, and we can address those, right? I'm struggling to find out the genesis of the chip one, apart from the fact that the shell is called a lipid nanoparticle. And maybe the nano is kind of throwing them for a loop and they're saying, okay, is this a chip? Okay? Nano just means small. Particle, self-explanatory. Lipid is the medical term for fat. So it's a small particle of fat. It's really a bilayer, but I don't want to get too technical, but it's a small particle of fat. That's the only link I can think of where this chip idea came from. I behoove you to actually look up the size, needle, and syringe required to insert a chip. It's pretty damn big, okay? So practically, it doesn't hold water. But just from a logistics standpoint, it is not, there is no metal, there's no chip, that's not even aluminum in there. It's literally the lipid bilayer or the shell of the adenovirus with the book. The only reason they put salt in the water is to make sure it's what we call isoosmotic. So it's the same concentration as what's in your bloodstream, so it doesn't cause harm. And they put a little sugar in there as well. And that's it. There's no chip in there. No one's tracking you. There's no chip.
I think this question comes up a lot, especially in Trinidad. I think they're very fearful, and the tracking thing comes up a lot. My daughter actually recently showed me what Hey Siri and Hey Alexa is. And only then did I realize that my phone tracks my voice. So I know I saw a video of a doctor explaining this, and it actually was like overwhelming to me to realize that, yeah, check out Hey Siri and Hey Alexa for real tracking evidence.
Yeah, so it's not tracking.
Okay, good. And there's no magnetics and there's no metal or no iron in these things.
No. There's none. You know, some of the older vaccines, I won't call them anti-vax, but the concerned mothers out there were concerned about aluminum in some of the vaccines. I know the Sinopharm has some aluminum in there, but the others don't. But again, that is a completely different, that's an adjuvant. It's something that helps the immune system really kick and respond, because I was like, what the hell is this? But there's no chip. There's nothing tracking you. And
I just want to also expand. I know you said you won't call them anti-vaxxers, and you're so correct in that statement. So there's a lot of people out there that are kind of deemed as anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists. And the majority of people are not anti-vaxxers, and they're not conspiracy theorists. They're just concerned citizens that don't know what to do with this mass amount of information out there. And things like the microchip and the magnetic arm float out there. And that's why I'm so glad for TRIBE for having this forum and inviting us here, because I'm sure that the citizens that want to be informed are here to be informed, so that they could better understand fact from fiction, which is the essence of this talk.
Most definitely, most definitely. Guys, I'm seeing a lot of the comments asking if I'm going to save the live. Of course, we are 100% saving the live. It will be right here on Carnival Tribe's Instagram page for you all to track back to any questions where you may want to see the answer over again, and even share it with as much people as possible, because the whole purpose of this campaign, #LetWeTakeAShotTT, is about information. It's about providing the public with information and answering the questions that they may not get the answers to. I know it's very hard for some people to hear, oh God, just go and get the vaccine. We understand that you definitely have questions, queries, concerns, and we at Let We Take a Shot TT are doing our best to get you the information and your questions at the best of our ability. So yes, it will be saved. Worry not, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to segue right to the next question now. Dr. Garcia, fact or fiction? But if it causes blood clots, why am I taking it? I don't want to get blood clots in my system. I won't risk it. Could you give us a little bit of knowledge on the blood clot situation when it comes to taking vaccinations?
And I'm glad you asked me this question, because this question actually hits home. So it's one thing to sit here and talk about vaccines and talk about statistics and numbers and COVID, but it's another when you actually see the reality of COVID. And that's something that I see every day. And I actually want to dedicate this answer to one of my patients that I lost, because he was a victim of that misinformation. And one of his statements is, "Doc, I did not get the vaccine because they told me it caused blood clots." And he eventually succumbed to blood clots from COVID. So I would start by saying the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson have been linked to blood clots. Remember, we spoke to you about the safety profile. We spoke to you about the honesty of the medical community. Anything that we see that flags our attention, we report. That has been what has always been. Every medication I prescribe, I know the side effects, but I make a judgment call on the risk versus the benefits. When it comes to Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, AstraZeneca has shown 4 cases of blood clots in 1 million people that got the AstraZeneca vaccine. In terms of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, 6 cases out of 6.8 million people who got the vaccine. And I just want you to compare that to the 1 million women on birth control. They got 500 to 1,200 cases of blood clots. And if we have any smokers in the audience contemplating the risk of blood clots due to the vaccine, I want you to put that cigarette down tonight, because in 1 million smokers, there is 1,763 cases of blood clots per 1 million smoker. So that is to tell you how small the risk of getting a blood clot is with AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson compared to everything else that we continue to do and we've been doing our entire life. But the reason that it is very popular and you're hearing this blood clots is because we're here telling you everything that we see.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome summary. You know, to reiterate her points, 1 in 250,000, 1 in 250,000. That means if everybody in Trinidad got the vaccine, 1.4 million people, baby to grandma, got it. 4, maybe 6 might get a clot from the vaccine. Compare that to what she said for clots from the virus. She gave you from the pill, 1 in 1,000. No one's trying to lock up the FDA and say, take the pill off the market. 1 in 1,000 from the oral contraceptive pill. Smoking, both the same. If you take a flight that is less than 3 hours, it's 1 in 1,000. And if it's more than 3 hours, it's 3 times that. Okay? If you catch COVID, you have a 1 in 12 chance of getting a clot in the lung. She gave you an example of a patient. Succumbed to it. You have a 1 in 9 chance of getting a clot in the leg. And God forbid you ended up in the ICU, 23% chance, 1 in 4, that you're going to get a clot from the virus. Not 1 in 250,000. So when she talks about benefits versus risk, if you just want to say sheer numbers, which one do I want to mess around with? I catch the virus, 1 in 10. I take the vaccine, 4 in 1,000,000. And if you got the clot, we've now started working out, just like we started working out to treat COVID. We understand we're looking, it's like, for those medics in there, it's like HIT, it's like heparin-induced thrombocytopenia. They got drop-in platelets. We know what to give them, what to give them, whether we're giving Lovenox or what. We know how to treat it. Okay, so they're not even in the same ballpark.
Understood, understood. Again, guys, I love the breakdown. I'm glad that Dr. Chelsea had her figures ready, because that is something that people are not taking into consideration. The risk with so many other things. You can get blood clots with so many other, you can get blood clots easier in so many other ways, that when you really hear the figures in front of you, it's chalk and cheese, you know, and that's something that we need to take into consideration. So I hope that question and answer would have helped people with any doubts in terms of the blood clots. Again, guys, all these questions that we are we are asking here tonight are questions that we've received in our inbox on our Instagram and Twitter pages as well. Look out for us on Thursday on Twitter as well, guys. This is hashtag Let Me Take a Shot TT, where we are myth busting today. It's fact or fiction. And this next question I'm directing towards Dr. Arscott. Now it's your turn. But I also want to hear from Dr. Garcia as well, as she's on ground in Trinidad and Tobago as well. The question is, herd immunity. Is it possible, or is it going to be possible with the virus changing so rapidly, developing variants so rapidly? We feel as though every time we make a stride, there's a new variant. So how are we going to this herd immunity?
Okay,
in Trinidad and Tobago.
So before it says it, I'd mentioned, low monox causing heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, but in this particular case, when we're treating clots, we use things like Xarelto. But for those who are saving it, I'm watching it. But either way, let's leave that. Let's talk about herd immunity. Where does the concept of herd immunity comes from? The premier here, where I am, talks about community immunity. It's a mathematical model, okay? It's, if we have, now we call it 70%. No, everybody's trying to get to 70%. Where do they get 70% from? 7 out of 10 people have the army. The guy breaks in, he's cuffed and shot. That person's a dead end. A dead end. The virus can't be spread. It's dead in that person. It gets into the one of the other three, it can multiply, therefore it can change and it can spread. They figure that once we get up to 7 out of 10, there's so few people left in which it can multiply or change that it eventually dies out. So you're like, hold on, suppose I catch it, I get my immune system respond to it. Now I've got my natural immunity against this thing. Why don't they include me in the herd? Because what we know is that when you catch it, depending on who you are, depending on whether you're old, young, have comorbidities or not, you might create antibodies to the jacket or the shoe. You might create antibodies to the hat. And you might create a lot or not much. Because while you're trying to create these policemen, you're also trying to fight this thing. So you're dividing up your resources. When I give you the hat, you're not fighting a damn thing. It's just a hat. So you just use all the resources to create antibodies against the hat. There's no jacket to form antibodies against. So the ones who get naturally infected, some of them don't have the antibodies against the hat. They might have it against the jacket or the shoe or the gun itself. So therefore, they're susceptible to another virus that comes by with a different jacket, a different shoe. What we know is that the virus can't change the hat very easily because it needs the spike protein to break in. It's like a key to break into your cells, which is why we chose the hat as the target. So to get to herd immunity, to get to 70% of us who are protected where it's a dead end, we need those 70% to be protected against the hat because all the millions of variants still have a green hat. Because if you have antibodies against the blue jacket, I can't put you in that one. Because a lot of the variants don't have a blue jacket anymore. They still have a green hat though. So to get to true herd immunity is through vaccination. Was that clear?
Clear, crystal clear.
Crystal clear.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Dr. Garcia, question. Again, another submitted question. I'm scared to get the vaccine because I won't be able to get pregnant. If I take the vaccine, I want to be able to give birth. This is something that some people believe that taking the vaccine will interfere with their chance of fertility. Could you address that first, please, Dr. Garcia?
Yes. So, of course, when they do studies, they can't do it on pregnant women. But what we can see is the women that have been within the study that have gotten the COVID vaccine, we could certainly follow them along. Right now, in terms of the CDC, right, they have something called V-Safe after pregnancy. There's currently 94,000 women enrolled there. And they've been following them along in their pregnancies. These are women that just didn't know they were pregnant and got vaccinated and found out they were pregnant soon after. And there has been no effect on the fetus on these women. When these women have given birth, we have then followed them. We have detected antibodies in the umbilical cord to the baby. We have detected antibodies in the breast milk of these women. And that is a huge benefit. These women are now offering their babies passive immunity and protection during this pandemic. So those are the studies that we have. That's in terms of pregnancy. That's also in terms of breastfeeding. And then in terms of fertility, they have done animal studies and they have seen no impact in those studies on fertility of these women. However, let's talk about COVID. We have seen COVID causing erectile dysfunction. And what the evidence is showing, right? And of course, it's too soon to tell that COVID, of course, we know causes inflammation and it's attacking those small blood cells of the penis. And that is one of the reasons what is leading to the erectile dysfunction, as well as the psychological impact of COVID, as well as the overall general health deterioration that COVID caused. But that is the erectile dysfunction that we're seeing from COVID on a whole. And we don't know how COVID impacts fertility either. We're yet to see. But what we do know is the vaccine appears to be safe in animal studies in terms of fertility. And we do know in those women that have gotten pregnant before the vaccine and we followed them through, there have been no safety concerns and there have only been positives to those women. And that's why many other countries, not Trinidad, is advocating for vaccination and pregnancy, because that is a very high risk category as well as vaccinating lactating mothers so that we can offer that passive immunity to the babies.
Beautiful. Well said. Applause, applause. Listen, all right? I had a couple points, okay? Because that was comprehensive. The pregnant mother who is not vaccinated, who catches COVID, has a 1.4 times the chance of being admitted to hospital as opposed to the person who's vaccinated, the pregnant one, okay? She spoke about, look, we can't give the vaccine to younger than 12 right now. But all these kids are now susceptible because we can't. But the pregnant mother delivers a baby and she can pass on the antibodies both via the placenta, i.e. the handcuffs, as well as via breastfeeding. So you're protecting that baby. All right. No, I told you earlier that I tried to find out where do these theories come from? Why? Where did they come from? The most I could dig up was that there were two, I would say, medics, scientists, who had an opinion and wrote a letter to the EMA, which is like the European FDA, and say, hey, we think that the spike protein, part of it has a particle called syncytin-1. And syncytin-1 is found in the placenta. So if you go give everybody this spike protein, you're going to create SWAT team against this spike protein. Therefore, that SWAT team is then going to turn and attack the placenta because they have the same molecule. It took no time to show that there is no such thing. There is no syncytin-1 in the spike protein. There's nothing even in spike protein that even looks like syncytin-1. So that theory was completely debunked. But like everything on social media, it just needs a little ripple and bam, it's gone. And then it spreads. Another point of genesis of this theory is that back a few decades ago, the live polio vaccine in Africa, they thought was linked to infertility. They debunked that as well. So those who thought that, okay, I got this vaccine and it made me infertile, it was spinning off from there, it was spinning off from syncytin-1. Both theories have been debunked. There's no molecular mimicry. There's no link. And as Chelsea said, Dr. Garcia said, it's actually protective, not just for the mother, but for the child.
That is something that I learned tonight as well. Take a pen in that again. Thank you so much, guys, for that point. And again, thank you so much for all the questions that have been answered so far. I have one more question on my list, and then I'm going to take a few questions from the comments. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in. And we're going to take a few questions from the comments. Again, guys, these questions have all been user submitted through our Instagram and the pages. And we will try to answer some as well tonight from this conversation as well. This last question, which I'm gonna give to both of our doctors tonight. And it's a very popular question in Trinidad, especially given our vaccine situation. Some of the vaccines on the market are substandard. They are better ones than the one that's available to me. I'm gonna wait for the best one. Which is the best one and why? So I want you all to both elaborate on that hesitant comment for me, please. We can start with Dr. Garcia.
So so we have a social media page at Live Health, and we do a lot of vaccine education, and that is something we touched on. And I would reiterate, the best vaccine is the vaccine available to you. So if I was not fully vaccinated now, I would run to wherever I can to get any vaccine that anybody wanted to give me, because again, it's not for you, it's for everyone else. And I'll let Dr. Arscott expand as well.
All right, so let's start with thanks for that, Dr. Garcia. Let's start with, where does this data about one being different from the other? How can we compare them? Okay, why are you saying one is better than the other? The reason you can't compare those efficacy percentages, this one saying 95, that one saying 84, that one saying 62. You know why you can't compare it? Because the studies weren't done the same. I'll give you an example. Pfizer said, okay, half the patients, we're going to give the vaccine. Half the patients, we give a little sugar tablets, a placebo. Send everybody out into the world. See who comes back with illness. Test the ones who are ill and see which one has COVID. And they said, oh, the ones with the vaccine, very, very few caught COVID. The ones who didn't have the vaccine, a lot caught COVID. Okay? That's how Pfizer did it. What did Oxford do? Give these half the vaccine, give these half sugar tablet, send them out, and test everybody when they came back, sick or not. So they're picking up the asymptomatic and the symptomatic. So guess what? The percentages are different. The outcome is different. You can't compare those numbers because you're comparing apples with oranges. What was the same between the two is that all of them prevented what Dr. Garcia said: disease, ICU admission, death. Okay? That was comparable. Johnson & Johnson, why can't you compare that to the first two? When Johnson & Johnson did their trials, COVID was already underway in the world. We now had more mutations out there. The South African mutation was already rampant. So now you're testing this vaccine in the real world with different enemies. The first two were doing it on the first enemy. How good is it to be, I said, okay, so you're testing it against something different and you're using a different method to measure how good it is. What you need to realize that all of them are 100% efficacious at preventing ICU admission and death. So as she said, you take the first one that comes. Looking at it now, I think 616 people have died or maybe 630 at this point, have died in Trinidad. 630. I think 17 people died yesterday. That is rough. We have to do, I like literally feel emotional about it. We have to do everything at this point to stop this enemy. So if you're thinking, I'm just going to wait, then you're going to be the one, and then you say, oh, I'll take the chance of catching it because I'm waiting. Then you're going to create a new enemy and potentially continue to spread and more people die.
And I want to reiterate on that. We're not only looking at the people that have died because they're already gone, but COVID impacts more people that don't have COVID than the people that have COVID. I want you to think about those cases of the mortality rate in Trinidad, but all of them had family members. All of them have trauma, post-traumatic trauma. Do you know what it's like for your family relative to die at home or to die in the hospital where you can't be with them? Or what about those people that don't know anybody that had COVID because they're socially isolated and have now been depressed? What about those patients that have been denied certain medical procedures because there's been a lockdown and they haven't been able to get that biopsy to diagnose their cancer, and now the cancer has spread? So COVID is not only the number of people that have died, it's a much larger domino effect.
Can I add
and one of the reasons, one of the reasons I moved back to Trinidad and Tobago is because, as I told Aaron, the grass is not greener on the other side. And I feel that the value of the Trini community, you can't find anywhere else in this world. And that's why I'm loving what Tribe is doing, because we need to mount that sense of Trini community, that sense of love for our neighbor that we have, and truly love thy neighbor.
Yeah, let me just, that's a very powerful point. To add to her point about it, the measure of the travesty is not life or death. March 22nd, I think it was, Nature Medicine came out with a paper on the long haulers. What are the long haulers? What are the post-acute COVID patients? What are they? They're the ones who may have been asymptomatic or not, but survived. And 6 months later, it's not just the lungs. It's the kidneys, the heart, the brain, the skin. The symptoms, in fact, increase mortality. 8 out of 1,000 increase mortality from just catching it and surviving from it. But you're seeing more mortality later on. So the long-term impact on all your organs is still being documented. So death is not the only measure. It may have a long-term chronic effects on you. So am I going to wait? Because I think, well, this one is 95% efficacy and this one's 84% efficacy. They're both fantastic. Okay, so take the first one you can get, please.
Most definitely, most definitely. I'm going to quickly look into the questions that have been submitted. All right, I have an interesting one here. If the vaccine doesn't prevent infection but lessens symptoms, how does it stop the spread?
So let's reiterate what we said earlier. What do you have when you got the vaccine? You've had that 2 weeks to look at this hat, make an army with police with handcuffs and a SWAT team looking for any intruder with this green hat, i.e. the spike protein. So that when he shows up, he may break in, but you cuff him so he can't multiply. You shoot him so he can't multiply. If he can't multiply, he can't go house to house and make you sick, but you also don't have enough to give away to someone else. So it's not transmissible, right? So you can't multiply, so you've got infected, but you're not getting sick, and you're not transmissible, and you haven't allowed it to change. So that's the difference between infection and disease. To put it in real terms, you can have HIV, and you don't allow it to multiply, and so you don't get acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. Not everybody with HIV has AIDS. There's a difference between being infected and having the disease, right? So that's the difference. I mean, you've cuffed him, you've shot him, he can't multiply, he can't change. You can't pass him on. So that's infection versus disease.
Thank you for that answer. And another user submitted question. I'm trying to bring it up here now. And the question is, if someone got COVID after their first dose, how does this affect the time for the second dose of their vaccination?
Great question.
Dr. Garcia, you wanna take this one?
Well, I think there's different answers to that. So I'm gonna answer following Ministry of Health of Trinidad and Tobago guidelines. So if someone got COVID after their first dose, they must wait 3 months after the time that they got COVID to get their second dose.
Right. So yeah, she's right. So it's a moving target right now as to what the guidelines are. So about 2-3 months ago, it was like if you caught COVID, you had to wait 3 months before you even got your first shot or even your second shot. And I'll say about a month ago, when you listen to, it wasn't Fauci, it was one of the members of the CDC said you literally have to just wait 2 weeks, and that's what they're doing in the state. In fact, they said 2 weeks after you've recovered is what they said in the States now. So that's where they're going, but it's a moving target depending on the jurisdiction. So I loved how she said, I'm going to go off of the Ministry of Trinidad and Tobago, Ministry of Health Trinidad and Tobago guidelines, because that is what you need to follow, okay? Because different jurisdictions have different guidelines. What is the underpinning of all these guidelines, though, is that what we want is that when we give you the shot, your immune system doesn't have the distraction. It can mount a response to the hat. It's not continuing to fight this enemy. And then you've got this cytokine storm and potentially even feel sicker, okay? Just because of the cytokine storm. So it's just saying that the theory is wait till they've recovered, whether it takes 2 weeks afterwards or 3 months afterwards, then they get a second shot or the first shot, wherever they are.
Thank you, doctors. Thank you. I'm seeing an interesting question. Can COVID-19 be transmitted via blood transfusions?
I actually don't know. I don't know that.
And neither do I. And I don't think we can quite know. Remember, as Dr. Arscott just said, it's a moving target. Studies are going on. 1 month ago, they said this. The next month, they said another thing. So as we know more, we'll be able to answer. But as of now, I wouldn't be able to give you 100% answer.
I saw one question earlier on, and I don't know if it's a big thing in Trinidad, but I've had to address this in Bermuda. I've had to address this in Jamaica on ivermectin. Okay, is this a big issue in Trinidad?
What issue?
Elaborate on it a little bit, please.
Where people are saying to use ivermectin versus the vaccine, or ivermectin as a treatment. I saw it actually in the questions just now. If it's not a big issue, I won't even touch on it. But
I don't think it's a big issue on the ground. I haven't experienced many people using it as prophylactic, but I think that you should touch on it because I have seen the trend of ivermectin being brought up now within Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, so I'll touch on it quickly. There are maybe 3 or 4 lines so that you all are head this off at the pass. Okay, so there's people saying, oh, look, ivermectin should be used as part of the treatment. I even had a patient in my office saying, she's like 74, doc, I'm just taking the pill. I'm not getting the shot. I was like, listen, ma'am, there is no pill that's going to prevent you from catching corona. Okay, so I said, let's talk about it. When we heard ivermectin was a potential, people were excited. They said, look, this is something we use to treat scabies. We use it to treat rosacea. You know, it's something that's been used for a long time. And that's their argument. Look, it's been used for a long time. I said, okay, let's look at the data. Let's see, where did they show that it actually killed corona? So they pulled up the in vitro data in a dish. And I said, okay, yes, it killed corona. It killed SARS-CoV-2 in a dish. It kills RNA viruses. And that was the headline. But that's not the most important line in that paper. The question is, what was the dose needed to kill the virus in the dish? 4,000 times the dose you'd give to a human. If I gave you 4,000 Panadol or Tylenol, you're dead. It was enough to kill a horse. So it was a toxic dose. So they said, okay, let's try and use it in humans, but we'll give it at a safe dose, like 1/4,000th of what is required to kill a virus. It didn't even dent the virus. And the ones that said, oh, it worked, they used it alongside everything else, the steroids, they throw the kitchen sink at the patient and say, oh yeah, it's the ivermectin. So you're like, how can you give them the apple, the orange, the melon, and the banana, and then they got better and say, oh yeah, it was the banana. So when they did the randomized control trial, it came out in JAMA, of course, it showed no difference. So for those out there who just if they come with the ivermectin thing, just tell them, listen, the dose. If I give you a little bit more than what I can normally give someone, it can hurt your liver, it can exacerbate asthma, it can kill you. And if I even attempt to give what they show in studies, you're definitely dead. So dispel that.
And I think the treatment for COVID is still ongoing. So as doctors, I think it's okay for us to say that we still don't have all the answers. We still don't have the best treatments, but we're here doing the best with the information we know now. And I think that's the biggest thing for COVID, and it's just weighing the best evidence of the risks versus the benefits in terms of treatments. And in Trinidad, there are different treatments that are limited in other areas. So we have to go with what our resources, what we have, and just put our best shot into this. But again, in time to come, hopefully we'll have better treatments for COVID.
Awesome.
I'm going to take just a couple more questions. If you all are seeing any interesting questions in the comments on your ends, feel free to take a jab at those questions. I'm just going to pull like one or two more.
I saw one question up there earlier on. It said, why do they feel sick after the second shot? Right? I saw that question. Oh, I got the second shot. Some people even feel it after the first shot. Like, oh, and I felt like I had fevers and chills and the flu and whatever else. And it's like, oh, did I get the virus? All right. First of all, you know you just got the hat, right? Second of all, you know when you got the second shot, it's well past 2 weeks. If it's a Pfizer, you're getting it 3 weeks after. If it's AstraZeneca, you get it 12 weeks after. So you had the 2 weeks to create the army against the hat with the first shot. So when they gave you the hat again to say, okay, we're giving it again to really see if we can build that army. You give it the hat, and the army is there to say, hold on, he's here. He's here. And what you need to realize is your army works better when your temperature is a little higher. So you have these little things called cytokines that IL-1, TNF-alpha, IL-6, that raises your body temperature so that the SWAT team goes on the prowl. And you feel pain up from head to toe. Why? Because it's scouring your body looking for this intruder. The symptoms start about 12 hours after the second shot, and about 12 hours later, gone. When I was having those symptoms, I was like, yes. For 2 reasons. 2 reasons. I said, yes. I just literally drank some tea, went to bed. I said, 1, I know my army's there. And 2, I know it's going to be done in about 12 hours because they're not going to find the virus. They're only going to see the hat and say, oh, he's not here. So said, so done. 12 hours later, symptoms gone. So when you feel the symptoms, it's your army on the prowl. It's not because you got the virus, because you know you didn't get the virus. You got the hat. All right?
Thank you. That basically answers this question up here. If you got the vaccine and no reactions after getting the vaccine, does that mean it didn't work?
No, that doesn't mean it didn't work. It doesn't mean it didn't work. Some people have an aggressive, the army really goes on a pro, but when they tested them, when they actually said, let's find an objective measure more than, oh, I feel sick, right? And they looked to see what the antibody response is, how much antibodies they have, how many policemen with handcuffs they have. Whether they felt symptoms or not, they realized it was high. In fact, in the 12 to 15-year-olds, they realized it was almost twice as high as in adults, okay, when they looked at the measure. So another reason why giving it to children is even better. But, you know, you're right, whether you're symptomatic or not. But if you have symptoms, that's why.
So I want to summarize by saying that I think we've established from this talk that we're at war. So I hope we could all go into this war together as a real army, together as one nation and one people. And then, Dr. Arscott, I have one question for you. I hope when this war is over and we've won the battle, that you'll be coming to Trinidad for Carnival with Tribe.
You know, I've been to Trinidad once, honestly, once. It was in 2005, okay? And I was telling Aaron earlier that about that experience. And it's been a lifelong check on my checklist to do it. And everybody talks about Tribe, no matter whether I'm in London, whether I'm in Jamaica, whether I'm in New York. If you're going to Trinidad, you want to be with Tribe. And I've got so many friends that literally charter flights every year down to Trinidad for Carnival. So it's still on my to-do list, but I promise you, as a fellow honorary member, I'm hoping to be there soon.
I like the sound of that. Y'all are speaking my language now, guys. That's what I love. That's what I live for. And I've grown up in the entertainment industry, and it's really been so tough for so many people. You know, Dr. Garcia, you said that it doesn't just affect the people with COVID, but it affects each and every one, the family members who have to see their other family members suffer. The people who are on lockdown now who can't go to work. And no, not just entertainers, not just DJs, not just promoters, but there are so many different restaurants that can't open. It really cripples us as a nation. It takes away so much when we can't, you know, function. And there's so many layers and so many different reasons as to why you should get vaccinated. And all we can do is provide you with that necessary information and hope that you make that decision, not just for yourself, but for your family, for your loved ones, for your peers, for your countrymen and women. All right, guys, so I'm going to let you all give your closing remarks before we exit. Dr. Garcia, ladies first, of course.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I hope that everything we provided helped answer some of your questions and give you some facts out of all the fiction out there. And I look forward to getting this pandemic over with.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Garcia. And closing remarks, Dr. Arscott.
Yeah, so first of all, it's been an absolute honor to be invited to be a member of this panel. You know, we're separated geographically, but this virus is geographically agnostic. Okay, it is ravaging everyone. And when I'm following Trinidad from afar, we all are. Even the premier in Bermuda, we donated vaccines to Trinidad recently. I think it was 9,000 vaccines. And because we're feeling the pain when we see your pain. Right? I want to just close exactly the way we summarized earlier. You're doing it to prevent the creation of a new monster. You're doing it to prevent yourself from having long-term consequences. Right? You're doing it not just for yourself, you're doing it for your fellow country. You're doing it because we want to get back to mass. We want to get back to carnival. Right? And we're not going to get back there unless we use this, which is our best tool. So thanks again for having us. And I look forward to seeing you guys in person one day.
Most definitely.
Bye.
Most definitely. Dr. Garcia, Dr. Arscott, on behalf of the entire TRIBE team, and of course, Trinidad and Tobago and all our followers and friends across the world, we'd like to thank you for taking your time to sit with us and open our eyes and share that knowledge, that information in the ways that you all brought it across. You all broke it our layman's terms, and you gave us all a chance to fully understand without the medical jargon too. And that's definitely, it goes hand in hand with what our entire campaign is about. So I definitely, guys, this has been one of my favorite episodes of this series so far. I've learned a lot tonight. And I just want to say thank you so much for the information. I really, really appreciate it. And I wish you all nothing but the best. And I can't wait to see you all on the road soon in TRIBE with us. Definitely.
Bye, everyone.
All right, bye, everyone. Thanks so much again.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.